saw something out of the corner of my eye off the side of the road in a culvert. And sure enough, there was 2 feet prints on either side of this hole.
We heard an absolute inhuman noise.
I freaked. I panicked. When that thing come out from behind a tree, it scared the hell out of me, and I just said, I'm not going back down there.
You're listening to the Skunk Ape Files. And now, here are your hosts, Stacy Brown Jr. and Paul Sanson.
All right, and tonight we have part 2 of our interview with Miss Marian Gant. So, without further ado, let's get back into it. So, what, in all your time researching, what had to be some of the crazier moments? You know, I know you had encounters.
Well, the craziest encounter I had was up in Michigan in 2013.
Oh, well, yeah, go ahead and talk about that.
Well, that was the one that I saw eye shine. I have to admit, I saw eye shine.
Now, was this a eye glow, or you shined it and it reflected?
Okay, eye glow. Yeah.
Okay, eye glow. All right.
Yeah. I went up there. It was a BFRO expedition, and we were up next to the Stacy National Wildlife Refuge. This is in Michigan in the UP. And I believe it was in March or something like that. It was cold still. And some of us went to this refuge down towards, we were by the upper Goosepen Pool and the lower Goosepen Pool. Why they call it that, and the other pools were called, you know, A pool, B pool, C pool, but this one they called Goose Pool. And what had happened is we had parked. There's a large forest that I guess they had areas that you could ski through it in the winter, which it wasn't winter time. It was cold, it was rainy and wet, but it wasn't snowing or anything. And we walked through the forest to this, you know, upper Goose, lower Goosepen Pool. And it was a white gravel road, and it came to like a bridge. It looked like a bridge or a culvert that divided the 2 pools in half. And then the road continued on, and it went off to the right and further into the area. And then to the right was a branch that went between the upper Goosepen Pool and I believe it was the A pool. So there's like a ridge. The road was like a ridge through there. So we had gone in there. There was 9 of us. I was the only girl. And we had a guy with us that had hunted in the area. And he said there's a lot of fowl, wildlife out there, you know, goose, ducks, all kinds of things out there. So as we're going along, we would hear a sound, and we'd like, that's a howl. And he'd say, no, that's a goose. And we'd say, oh, there's a howl. And he'd say, no, that's, you know, something else.
Right.
And, you know, this happened a lot. And we just walked around the pool, did screamed, did knocks. We found what looked like a definite big boy trail where the branches were broke about 6 feet off the ground. But it went into this dense area, and we weren't familiar enough to go off trail. It was getting dark, and we weren't familiar enough with the area to go off trail. So we made a note of it and kept going, following these pools. So we get back to the parking lot. It's full dark. I want to say 11, 12 o'clock at night. And some of us decided to go back to another area. I think it was the Mead. I think it's the Mead State Park where somebody had thought they'd seen some. We decided to go back up to the Goosepen Pool and just hang out for a little bit. So we went back through the forest. We get to this road by this pool, and we're just shooting the breeze. It was a good bunch of guys. We were having a good time just talking and stuff. And I remember I was sitting on one of the guardrails on the bridge, and I noticed 2 of the guys get up and walk to the middle of the bridge. And they're looking, you know, across it, and I hear them, you know, going, 2 o'clock? Yeah. 3 o'clock? Yeah. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? They go, we're seeing red lights. We're seeing what look like red eyes. And I'm not seeing it. And that's something that we never understood. I could not see the red that night. They were seeing the red. I couldn't see it. But some other ones started seeing this happening too. They're seeing this in the woods. There was a place where, I told you there's this ridge that between the Goose Pen Pond and the, I guess, A Pond or something like that, A Pool.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there are trees. You could see over them, and there are trees, and there was a big bush between two trees. We didn't remember being there. Was that bush there before? I don't know. A few minutes later, we look, and that big bush is gone. Another thing we noticed is, the road, I told you the road curved to the left. It was white gravel. The moon wasn't out. There's clouds, but the clouds were very high, so the moon was diffusing through it. So we didn't have any lights on, but you could see this white gravel road go up, and you see it curve off to the left. Well, the curve disappeared. Something was leaning out from the woods and was blocking the road. And eventually, a couple of guys saw something walk across on all fours.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it was something. And, this is all going on, seeing the eyes and stuff, and I'm going, where? And they're trying to point out to me I'm not seeing red. But eventually, there's a sign there, and I'm standing there, I'm trying to see this red, and all of a sudden this white light comes out from behind the sign. It looked like somebody turned on a pen light. That's how bright it was. And it went back behind the sign. And then it came out again.
Just one light?
Again, and then it came out farther, and there were two of them,
Okay.
side by side. And I'm like, holy. So I asked one of the guys behind me, are you seeing this? And they're like, yeah, we're seeing this. And it was playing peekaboo from behind the sign. Meanwhile, somebody else further higher than the sign and further back were seeing the red eyes again. I couldn't see them. I don't know why. But there was more, like I said, there's several people there, and they were seeing the red eyes. All I saw was the white eyes playing peekaboo back and forth around the sign. So this went on, I don't know how long this went on. I mean, because it would slow down and it would spark up. The bush would be between the trees, it'd disappear. The side of the road again would disappear, the curve in the road, and then it would come back. And we kept discussing, should we go across towards them? And we just had the feeling that they liked having the bridge between us and them. It's like I could go a little bit further, and it didn't seem like it hurt the activity, but if one of them started approaching them, the activity would die off. They'd go back again, and it seemed like it would spark up. So
Right.
then, I don't know how long it was, it died down, and we decided, well, do we stay or what? And we just had the feeling like, okay, that's enough for tonight. We don't want to chase them away. We don't want to antagonize them, so we decided we're going to head on back. And that was fun because we turned around, and here's this, we realized, wonder if they circled around us or not, because this white road disappeared into the forest. And, but we had to go through there to get to the cars, so that when we got up to disappear into the forest, one of the guys said, well, hey, once we get inside the trees and they can't see us, let's stop. Sometimes they'll knock to say that you're leaving the area. So we get up in there and we get into the dark trees where we think they can't see us, and we stop and nothing happens. So one of them just kind of said, see you guys later. Thanks for a good time. And we turned around and took a couple steps, and basically a monkey yelled at us. It's the closest I've come is a gibbon. And it just, I can't even reproduce, yelling at us.
Right.
Word.
We turned around and looked at the guy that hunted the area, and this guy, was short. He was wider than he was tall, and he was jumping up in the air and dancing, and he's like, I've never heard anything like that before. Because, all night we kept getting fooled, so we looked at him first, and we were ecstatic. He's never heard anything like that, and it sounded like a gibbon or a monkey yelling at us.
Right.
So we stood there for a few minutes, and we're like, should we go back or not? And we still just had the feeling that because of the red eye shine, no, we'll come back tomorrow night. So we turned around, we took a couple more steps, and it yelled again. And this time it was louder. And same conversation where should we go? Should we stay? We almost went back, but we thought, no, we didn't want to, push it. We started walking again. And again, this happens every time we started to walk. We take, 4 or 5 steps, it yelled. We stop, nothing happens. We take 4 or 5 steps, it yelled. We stop, nothing else. So we're taking, we're walking down the road. All of a sudden, we had 4 different voices yelling at us. And I'm telling you, this was a stereo system or somebody trying to. There's no way.
Were they all from the same direction, or?
Excuse me?
Were they from the same direction, or were they spread
Yeah,
out
it was all
apart?
the same direction back from the bridge where we had been at. And it was like 3 or 4 voices. I mean, 4 different. And I just, like I said, there's no way. There's no way it was a stereo. There's no way it was people. It's just, again, the closest I've come to are given calls. Because I went home and I looked at every single monkey recording I could find to find something that matches it.
It's
so again,
it drives you nuts, don't it? Trying to figure out what you heard.
Oh yeah, and again, trying to even reproduce it, we can't. We can't. I don't have the voice. I can't even come close to it. But it did it one more time. Again, we went back and forth. Should we come? Should we stay? Should we not? And it did it. We kept on going, and it did it one more time. And when we look back at it, we talked about it later, it sounded like young ones. And it sounded like they wanted to come back, and the last one was fine, go home. It was like, stay, 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 stay. And then the last one was like, rah, 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 and it was like, fine, go home.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well.
So that was cool. We did try going back the next day. We took some people back, but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same atmosphere.
There is an atmosphere. When these things are around, it's almost like you can feel them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also we think one of the reasons they were attracted to us, we do think it was some older, like the Bigfoot, the eye shine, the red eye shine was very high. I think maybe that's one of the reasons I couldn't see it is I was not looking high enough. The eye shine that I saw behind the sign was only about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. The guys were saying they were seeing eye shine 5 and 6 and 7 feet off the ground.
Wow.
So that's the impression we got, was that we had some juveniles that wanted to check us out while the grown-ups were watching to make sure nothing happened.
Gotcha.
So
almost like a sentry type situation.
Yes. And so when we were there the first night, we were just a group of people. We were having a good time, taking it easy, laughing a lot, joking a lot. When we went back the next night, me and another guy, we tried to reproduce the same atmosphere, but the people with us just wouldn't. I mean, we had 2 guys that set chairs in the bridge and turned around back to back with the recorders. We had people walking back and forth with the recorders, the big ears, trying to listen. It wasn't the same. So I did think I finally saw a red eye glow when in the woods, because we did try to reproduce the thing by going around the ponds, talking, yelling, joking. Then we met back at the bridge, and as I was coming back to the bridge in the woods, I saw this bright red light flare up, and it flared up and then it disappeared. And I thought it was a group that my sister had gone with, because they had gone farther down the road. So I thought, they're cutting back through the trees and they've got their headlights on. So when she got back, I asked her, I said, well, hey, why did y'all come through the trees? Did you see anything? And she said, we didn't come back through the trees. I'm like, okay. So that's why I think I saw one of them checking us out, but it didn't stay.
Oh, okay. Is that what you're saying? The light that you seen possibly was eye shine and not more along the lines of an orb?
Eye shine.
Right on. So how would they
shine.
do
Definitely
that?
not an orb. There was no floating or anything like that. It flared up in the trees, and then it disappeared again, like a blink. something like that, or it ducked behind a tree.
Right, right. So, speaking of the orbs, you have seen some, though, and I know this. When we were filming Creatures, do you remember the blue ones at the Bridges place that come up out of the ground and went back in?
Well, see, that's the thing. I only got to see a half of one because you interrupted it.
I know I interrupted it, but I thought you seen it more than that.
No, it was coming. I was, we were talking about it. It was dark. You had to run back and get some more electrical cords for the lights.
Yep.
And I was there with Dave, I believe it was. Dave and I think Stevie, or maybe it was Marty.
Okay.
And they said,
No,
hey,
Marty
Dave,
was with me.
Okay, so maybe Stevie said, hey, Dave, why don't you start talking? You seem to have a lot of luck bringing them around. So he started talking, hey, come out here. Can you come see us, this and that? And, it's dark and pixelated and stuff. But sure enough, over on the ground in this area, this blue light come up. At first I thought it was, the bioluminescence from mushrooms or something.
Right.
But it started pulsing, and it got a little bit bigger, and it got a little bit bigger, and it got a little bit bigger, like it was coming up out of the ground. And then you guys came flying up on the ATV. That was that.
Went right back in.
Yeah, it was gone.
Yeah,
It
that's the craziest thing. I don't know if these are, correlated in any way. Maybe the Bigfoots are not the lights, but maybe they are attracted to those areas or some energy or something. I have no idea, but they're a real thing. And anytime it kind of gets brought up, I love talking about it. And especially to people that don't really buy into that whole woo. You know what I mean?
my opinion on woo.
Oh, yeah. But the lights are a very real thing.
Well, no, that's why I don't just disregard it completely, because the first time I brought up orbs with you, I believe you were camping with your son, and I was camping with another woman. We were at the Bridges.
Yep.
And we were on the ridge behind the house, and the Bridges had brought up that they had been seeing them. And
Yep.
I had asked you about it, and you're like, I have no idea. And then the next time I see you, maybe 4 or 5 months later, when we're doing this video Creatures at the property, you said, yeah, I've seen them. Just matter of fact, yeah, I've seen them. And I respect you, and I'm not going to just disregard you telling me that, yes, you've seen them. I can't say, what they are or real, or if I've seen them, but you've seen them.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it takes seeing them, and it's just like a Bigfoot. It takes seeing it. And like I said, they may not be correlated. There could be multiple things. The swamp gas theory works. However, my friend David can call these things, and he'll go out and talk to the woods, and they'll show up.
Well, that's what was happening this time before you interrupted it.
Yeah, and he's done that several times, and he even we got a spot in Goose Pasture that he's been able to successfully do that. So swamp gas theory doesn't really flow with what I'm seeing from him, because it seems to be an intelligence to it. But however, they also at the same time, it doesn't mean that the Bigfoots just because they're happening in Bigfoot areas.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. You can't even prove a Bigfoot exists.
Nope.
So you're going to try to prove a Bigfoot exists by saying that the orbs prove it, something else that you can't prove exists? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I used to think that too. You know how strongly I used to think about that was, you're saying it's all orbs now because you can't find proof.
Right.
And, I guess you stay in something long enough, your ideas and the things that you experience will change. Yeah,
and that's what they're supposed to. They're supposed to. It's how you change. If you, I've heard people say you have to have an open mind. And my response has always been, yeah, you got to have an open mind, but you also have to have a screen or all sorts of crap flies in. You know what I
Right.
mean?
You got to be able to filter it.
It's you know, pay attention to the stuff, take notes of this stuff, but you can't expect that stuff to prove when you can't prove it. How's it going to prove something else?
Right.
You know, and you know, and if you make up your mind and don't let the data take you where take you where it needs to go, then you might as well not be out there at all.
Right. A lot of people get stuck in their own theories, and that's very hard. I was guilty of it myself. Now I'm not, but I used to very well be sold on the things that I believed, and I didn't want to hear other stuff. It's hard to do, but then you just end up chasing your tail, and the stuff that you're wanting things to be a certain way. It's just not healthy, and it's not real research. It's closed-minded approach. So it's more of a.
It's like eye shine. I didn't believe in the eye shine, and
Right.
then I saw it. Well, you know, so now it exists for me, but I can't expect you to believe it, and since I can't prove it, I can't say it proves Bigfoots exist either. You know what I'm?
Oh yeah, you know, and so I'm working on this thing that people who have seen Bigfoots have also either had a paranormal encounter of some type or a UFO encounter. So I got to ask you, have you ever encountered anything otherworldly, or, well, I guess, yeah, that's otherworldly too, so.
Well, the UFO stuff, no.
Right.
But there was a house I lived in that had some weird things happen. We built the house. That's what was strange, you know, on a piece of property. And it had 2 stories. My father had an office on the second story, my bedroom on the bottom. But there were times where we would be, you know, in the house, downstairs eating dinner or something, and something would walk across the ceiling on the second floor, or chairs would scrape. And we could never explain how this was happening if we were the only people in the house. And then my sister, we also had like a little 2-story shed that we had a fort, second story.
Right.
And one night my sister told me she was sleeping up there, and she looked out the window, and there was a man sitting there looking up at her.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Never seen the guy before, never seen him after, couldn't recognize him, but he's standing there staring at her. So just
now
little things like,
your sisters also had a skunk ape encounter, right?
well, she was also a BFO investigator for a while. She's had them yell at her. I told you about how she was playing the Sierra sounds off her desk.
Right.
And had that, and she also, you know, found a track back in there. What's strange is that we eventually sold the house. We moved out, and one of the people who moved in contacted us and asked if we'd ever had anything happen there. And it turns out that they would hear something walking upstairs. And one time in one of the bedrooms, you know, nobody was in the bedroom. They went to open the door. They heard furniture moving. They went to open the door, and something had pushed a dresser or something in front of the door and blocked it, so nobody could get in.
Did you ever do any research to see if there was anything on that land before?
No, and it's I don't know. From the reading I've done, I haven't ever dug into it. From just the reading of the history and such, nothing pops up. You know, it would have to be something probably with Indians in the area or something like that. It was on a lake, so I'm sure, you know, Indians had been in there at some point.
Well, so that's my theory, is that maybe people who see skunk apes or Bigfoots, you know, a lot of people I'm talking to have also encountered, you know, other things as well, dogmen or whatever. So that maybe that data's going to lean to we're all crazy. Or
Well, think
or
about it
that
this way. I heard somebody talking about this. They said something about how I've been in the woods all my life, and I've never, seen a Bigfoot or anything like that. And it was brought up that maybe because you didn't know what to listen for.
Exactly.
And
That's what my
maybe
dad used to
people
say.
are having, things that cross over from Bigfoot into supernatural, whatever, because they pay a bit more attention to what's going on around them.
Right. Yep. My dad used to say he wished he had paid more attention because he spent a lot of time in the woods when he was younger. And he had just paid more attention because he said that there had to be more of them back then, in the 80s, because the 70s and 80s, people having all these sightings, as there's not really that many anymore.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure you've noticed how it's dwindled down. Like you said, all the sightings seem to have, the reports we get now are, 15 years ago or 25 years ago.
Yeah. I also blame that partly on all the shows that are out there. That's one of the things I noticed when I was still taking reports, is all of a sudden everybody had a checklist. It smelled, it threw a rock, it threw a stick, it knocked a tree. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
they go through a whole checklist. Before the shows,
it made people more open to talking about it, but it
definitely,
also
yes.
flooded it with, you don't know how many times I'd be, hey, where's Bobo?
Yes.
Like, I
talk to
don't know where
Bobo.
Bobo
I want
is.
to talk to Matt. I want to talk to Cliff.
Yep.
But yeah, people are more open. I had more people approach me. Well, I was able to approach people. There's a guy that came out here that put in my FiOS line. I'm building the house, and they had a family name that I recognized that had lived in this area for a long time, one of the first settlers in the area. So I asked him, and it turned out he had an uncle that used to hunt on the opposite side of this area that I live, this conservation area I live in.
Right.
And he said his uncle never said what he saw, but one day he came home and said he saw something, and he's never going back.
Wow.
So that's in our area. Another time I dropped my son off at a friend's house, and when I went to pick him up, the father came out to talk to me, and he said, hey, I've seen one. I said, what do you mean you've seen one? He goes, well, I understand your son saw a Bigfoot. And I said, yeah. He goes, I saw one when I was a kid. And he was out in Brooksville along
Right.
19 before that all developed. And he was out playing in the woods, and he saw one walk across an opening in the woods, just plain as day. He said it was not a bear. It was definitely a Bigfoot. I had a woman I worked with. I was,
Right.
taking a lot of time camping, and we worked in the same little, they call it an office, but basically a cubicle. And finally I turned around and said, look, this is what I do. This is what I enjoy. This is why I go camping so much. And turned out she'd seen one also over also with Lacucci River. Her and her son and her son's friends, they went fishing, and they went up and down the river further from her. She stayed by the cooler and such, and she kept hearing something above the bank, above her, something in the bushes, and she'd turn and she'd look and nothing there, and she'd hear it moving around, look, nothing there. Finally, she got up, walked back, and there was one standing there staring down at her. It was, covered by the palmettos, but she got a good look at the face. She started screaming, and it ran off, and their sons came back, and they made fun of her. They said that, that she thought that she saw some hobo or something like that, and she's like, no, I got a good look at its face. It was a Bigfoot.
Wow.
So that's a good part of the show, is that, yes, more people are more open to telling me these stories if I ask.
Yeah.
The bad thing is that, yeah, like you said, all of a sudden you get all kinds of people. I had a woman try to tell me that she had a cave, and in the cave there was bedding and this and that. And this was after telling me that she used to walk down the railroad tracks at night to go get beer and cigarettes, and that's how the first time she saw one. And it just the area she's discussing with me, okay, the railroad tracks and stuff are here. There are no caves in that area. There's nothing in that area. You know what I mean? Except houses and a railroad track. But you're telling me there's caves too. I had another guy tell me that they were camping, and it threw a log that had to have been 200 pounds. And I said, really? Did you find the log? And he goes, no. And I said, well, then how did you know it was 200 pounds? Because of the sound it made. I know.
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the sound it made.
I actually had a guy comment on one of my videos saying, because we have found these, or somebody had found some gorilla tracks in Fort McCoy. And they went to those guys there in Ocala. And those guys quickly told them, hey, they're wooden cutouts. We don't want to mess with it. So then they get a hold of us, and long story short, the guy commented on my video saying that I was wrong because nobody would hoax in Fort McCoy. He used to live there, and nobody would hoax, you know. And that it's just because he knew so.
Yeah.
You know? Like, okay, you're not even going to look at the tracks. You're just going to tell me I'm wrong because you lived there 3 years ago. And he's like, yes. I'm like, oh, okay, well, hey, at least you're honest. So.
Yeah. I mean, some people have great patience with that. I don't have patience with that.
No, it's like banging your head into a wall.
It is. I don't, you know me, I don't pay attention to every single little thing that goes on. I'm not one of these people that can recite statistics like you do baseball cards.
Right.
You know, I'm very interested in the subject. I like getting out there. But no, a lot of the stuff that's going on I don't agree with.
Oh, yeah.
And that's saying it nicely.
Oh, yeah. There's it seems like everybody's got an agenda, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's probably maybe by the time we're dead they'll have something, but it's pushed back discovery, I say, about another 20 years.
do you really think it's going to be 20 years before we have some kind of proof, or do you think we'll ever have any kind of proof?
I think we'll have proof eventually, yes. But it's going to, you know, nobody's going to take it seriously, especially with all the stuff that goes on now.
Right.
You know,
well,
it's showbiz right now.
Yeah, there's Dr. Squatch soap, which
Yeah.
they did not pay me to say that. So.
You know, it's hard. There's good parts where more people are talking about it. You know, podcasts like this, I learn a lot from podcasts like this from people, you know, that aren't making the circuits, that don't have big names, but they're out in the woods doing things. And to me, I love that. I love that sharing of information. What I don't like is the showbiz part of it.
Well, you know, if there's money to be made, there's always going to be vultures. So
yeah.
That's, unfortunately, I've learned that the hard way.
But then again, you know, how are you going to get out there to go search for yourself if you don't make money? I understand that part.
It is a double-edged sword. You know, if you can make money, that's great. But the problem is somebody's paying you, and they're going to want to tell you how to do things.
Yeah. Oh, did you get that paper I sent you on the palmetto plants?
I did. And so, where can people find this? I'm going to put a link up to it, or maybe place it itself on the website, because it's very interesting, especially with this possibly being one of the main food sources.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I think it was near where my son saw it, that it was near our house, was because it's a big, it's not a big area, but the palmettos are very mature there. Like I said, some of them are 4 and 5 feet high. And this paper I found, after I found the second sighting where the palmettos were chewed, I started researching palmettos. I've always heard there's vitamin C, yada, yada, yada. But I came across this paper, I believe it was the Southwest Florida Water Management District, had somebody do a study on the impact of the palmettos to the environment, I guess for the animal habitat.
Right.
And it surprised me how many animals live on the sawberries, the palmetto berries. Evidently they're so good that deer, raccoon, bear, they will survive. They'll eat only these berries when they're in season instead of anything. Even they'll even ignore acorns and such to go after these berries. I believe they said there was one bear they found. This one bear went 12 miles out of its way to find these palmetto berries. So,
Well, it's got to be a staple of a diet, especially if you're in like a pine forest, because you've been in enough of them. There's not really a whole lot else to eat.
no.
And it's interesting because what I'm wondering is if it's like the hunting seasons. Do these berries come in like 2 months earlier down south and then kind of, work its way up the state? Because that would kind of make sense for the migration theory,
Yeah. I just wonder how the impact of the supplement. How supplements are big now, where everybody takes green tea and salt palmettos and things like that. How that's affected them, because now you've got a lot of people harvesting these berries.
Well, how many people are harvesting them? Because, I never have a problem finding these things when they're in season. They're everywhere.
See, I don't, maybe it's because of the area I live in, I don't see a lot of them.
Oh, wow. Okay, so, if you, during the season when they're in, if you ride out FH13 out here in the Apalachicola National Forest, you'll see vans parked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be these day laborers, and they're just out there just picking them and picking them and picking them. You know what I mean? But it doesn't seem that they put a dent in it. I mean, I'm sure they do, but I just don't know that there's that many people looking for them. But it's definitely something I think that needs to be thought about a little bit more when it comes to trying to find these things.
Yeah, and I think what's happening in my area, like I said, this conservation area behind me is mostly swamp.
Right.
So I think that the patches that they are growing are probably getting stripped fairly quickly. Especially, we've got a lot of deer and turkey out here.
Right.
So that's probably why I'm not seeing them.
Well, when I first got into this, I just remember thinking, me and my dad were out in the Bradwell Bay area, and I was just like, what in the world would these things eat?
Mm-hmm.
And those were all over the place, and I didn't even think about it because I was thinking maybe they needed more like fruits, but I think anywhere that there was a lot of bears, you see a lot of these saw palmettos.
Mm-hmm.
Ocala National Forest, Apalachicola National Forest, ton of bears in both those locations. It's also a ton
we
of
had deer out behind me too.
Yeah, there's also a ton of the saw palmettos. So maybe that's where you got to look for your Bigfoots. Maybe that's a good spot to start.
Like I said, the way they pull up the roots. I had one other guy. He was over on, he's near Smyrna Beach, I believe it was.
Right.
He had some yelling. He had a part of a hunting lease, and he had seen one, and we were out there talking to him, and it scared him. He didn't want to go out there unless there was a couple of us with him, and he said he quit hunting, that he actually moved over to another part of the lease that was away from the swamps. He said it was higher, drier palmettos. And as soon as he said palmettos, I showed him a picture of what we'd found with my son. I said, have you ever seen this? And he said, yeah. And as soon as I told him, well, this is from a Bigfoot did this, he just turned white. He's like, crap. Because he thought he was getting away from them and be able to hunt again, and he found out they're in the area he's at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It must be a magnet.
It must be.
Well, we are over an hour, believe it or not. So I think this is going to end up being a 2-part episode, which is fine. Usually it's not easy to get people to talk for, as much as we've talked, but it's flowed very well, and I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
and I appreciate you having me and letting me talk.
Oh, hey, it's like I
Talk
said,
to
this
talk.
is the people love the stories. You know what I mean? And you've told some really good ones tonight.
thank you. And next time you're out there, will you give me a call so I can come join you?
I'm actually going to shoot you a message. We're going to be at a certain location at the end of September. And you're
Great.
more than welcome to come. Marty and the whole gang, we're going to be out there. So.
That's great. Yeah, I want to see that dart you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. So, well, all right, Miss Marian. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marian.
Thank you.
And,
I'll talk to you later.
Yes, ma'am. I'll talk to you soon. All right, Miss Gant, thank you for coming on. So,
she did fine.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why she was nervous about it.
Yeah.
Who knows, man?
Yeah,
this is part of it.
She had some good stuff.
Yeah, she's been at it a while. She's very credible. Her sister's, her sister's been at it a while too. So,
Yeah, it was cool.
But that whole Saul Palmetto thing, man. There's probably some weight to that, with the migration theory through the state.
Yeah.
And you heard her. She just basically tells you the corridor there at the beginning of the interview where these things are moving through.
Yeah.
I think maybe like choke points in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like areas that are smaller. That may be the spots to actually, to record audio long term, to maybe put some game cams out, because if these things are traveling, these small, narrow, like choke points in that corridor, and the scientists, they have, tracked panthers like this through the same corridor.
Yeah.
From the Keys all the way up in the Okefenokee Swamp.
Yeah, I'm sure they got to use the same.
Maybe those choke points, we just, we put our efforts there. And they'd have to come through it sometime. Because, hey, if you could figure out the migration time, when they're in a certain area and which way they're headed, you could track them all year long.
Yeah, we'll have to look into more about those berries and see where when they start blooming at what times of years and where.
I think it's worth looking into, because there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of new developments, and it would be pushing these things into certain places. So it's gonna be something like that. I think that's gonna end up finding the proof. Because like she said, we're not landlocked. On the other sides of the state is the damn ocean. So they're not going nowhere that way. So I think we have a leg up on
just,
it.
Get a few thousand of us and hold hands and just walk towards the Keys and
yeah, man. Singing Kumbaya. Well, I want to take this time to plug the Skunk Ape Lives. Also, where else should people be checking us out at?
Well, we got the Skunk Ape Files Twitter account, and then we have a Facebook group now, Skunk Ape Files. And then I try to set up an Instagram, but they won't let me put an account in for some reason with that name. And I've tried hitting them on social media to see, what the problem is, and they don't even answer. So
yeah, the skunkapefiles.com. You
Yep.
can check it out there. And we are very much looking for questions. We're very much looking for stories. If you've had an encounter, or if you know somebody that's had an encounter, send them our way. Okay? Emails in the description. The skunkapefiles@gmail.com.
it's at Skunk Ape Files on Twitter. post
Yep.
there. Follow us. You know, we post whenever a new episode's out.
That's the only way we're going to be able to keep this going. You
Yeah.
know, basically because we are only talking about the skunk ape. We're not getting into a lot of Bigfoot, you know, other states. So our people that we're going to be talking to are limited. So if you guys like the program, by all means, please, if you know somebody that's seen the skunk ape, push them our direction.
Yeah, we don't have to use any names if they don't want. We're not gonna blast them out and tell people where they live and all that stuff. You know.
Otherwise, you're going to have to sit here and listen to me ramble on about skunk ape theory.
Please help us.
I have a feeling we'll be doing one of those eventually.
Yeah.
Lack of guests. However, thanks everybody for tuning in. This concludes our 6th episode. So,
You think it would be a little blatant if we started calling the podcast the Skunk Ape and Beyond?
right? Oh, and by the way, let us know what y'all think. We are thinking about having a Skunk Ape Files expedition. Me and Paul Sanson will have a public expedition. Blah, blah, blah. It's so hard to talk with this delay in my ear. But yeah, have an expedition where we take people out and we look for the skunk ape. So we take our listeners. So,
Yeah.
you know, if y'all like that idea, let us know. Subscribe, share, and that is my spiel for today. Thank you for listening. And for the Skunk Ape Files, I am Stacy Brown Jr.
And I'm Paul Sanson.
And we will see y'all next time. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.